No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
And here we go. This is Mike Lodge. I am the business advisor. I hope everyone had a great Good Friday and that you took some time and thought about what Good Friday's all about and what Easter's all about. Remember, Easter's not just about the bunny rabbit and eggs, hiding eggs. It is about chocolate, though. In my world, it's about the chocolate. But listen, I hope you had a Good Friday, and also tomorrow will be Easter. Remember to go to church, and remember what it's all about. I was listening to the jobs report yesterday, and it came out on how many jobs were created and everything else. But as I was going through my content source, I saw a whole bunch of different types of headlines of how they described it. And I'm going to read some of them to you. Okay, so LiveMint, and by the way, they created 236,000 jobs for that particular month. And when we look at those numbers, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, we have to step back and say, okay, who is selling us on what here? Okay, because we have huge layoffs going on at the moment. And they're not including any of those numbers in the jobs report. So anyway, let's go through some of these headlines. LiveMint.com, which is a good site. I like that site. Their headline was, solid U.S. job data keeps Fed on track for a rate hike in May. So what they're saying is that the job numbers were okay, and that probably entices the Federal Reserve to increase the interest rates a little bit more. The Guardian says, U.S. adds 236,000 jobs in March as labor market weakens. Okay, so they're saying that the labor market is weakening. March jobs report, this is Smart Asset. March jobs report shows a cooling labor market. Here's what that means. Investopedia, which I go to a lot for a lot of my sourcing, their headline was, excuse me, my voice is going. Their headline says, U.S. added 236,000 jobs in March, underscoring brisk labor market. And Kiplinger.com came out, and their headline was, jobs report shows pace of hiring slowed in March. What the experts are saying. And then the New York Times came out. The jobs numbers will factor into a complicated calculation for the Fed. So we had a whole bunch of different views on what these job numbers are. And what I'm finding is that you have to take these reports and you have to go through them. At least I go through them. And you have to fine-tooth comb them, trying to find where the numbers is. But what the numbers are. What I do, though, is I go to the actual report that comes out from the government. And I go down and I break it down by different sections, by different groups. If you look at technology, and if you look at manufacturing, they had no jobs growth whatsoever. Those are high-paying jobs, okay? The places where they had the highest paying, not the highest paying, but the highest amount of jobs created was in the leisure and hospitality industry. Now, I want you to think about this just for a second. We're at the beginning or in the middle portion of springtime, and we are going to go into the summertime. And Americans are starting to go back and take their vacation time. They're taking their time off, and they're going to places where they want to go. That's how the money is being spent at the moment. Wisely, I'm going to have to lecture you on that later on. But So what's happening is that they're ramping up these hospitality and hotel jobs to take care of what's going to happen during the summertime. And it takes training. It takes a whole bunch of different things to get these people ready, which is just in a few more weeks. So they're starting to ramp up on that and getting ready for you guys to go take your vacation. Now, a lot of these jobs are not full-time jobs. These are going to be seasonal jobs and will end at the end of the summer season. So we have to take these numbers with a grain of salt because it's not telling you the whole story of what's happening right now. Now, in healthcare jobs, that seems to be constant because healthcare is always a job that's needed. And some hospitals are bringing back the individuals that had been thrown away during the pandemic. So they're redoing their staffing and gearing up. Now, we have to understand that these numbers presented to us are not good numbers. They're bad data going in. Because the other storyline that we should be considering is that many Americans cannot afford their current job. It's not paying their debts. It's not paying their houses. It's not paying their food costs. It's not keeping up with the inflation. And that was the other part of this unemployment report, is that inflation is still drowning out wages at the moment. No one can afford what's going on out there. And there was a report also that I read this morning that the housing market is gearing up at this very moment on foreclosures because so many people are in default of their loans. And these are not the big wigs. These are not the guys that own $1 million house and so forth. It's the little guy who is barely surviving on their wages. And it's not covering their mortgage. It's not covering their utilities. People are behind on utilities also. So we have this looming situation in the housing market of these lower-end houses starting to be repossessed. And it's going to start even more in the next month. So we need to watch out for that. So I'm hoping that when the Federal Reserve is looking at all of this, that, and also all of those pundits out there and individuals who are writing about this, that they also take into consideration that the jobs numbers has a huge story behind it of jobs being let go, people losing their homes, people losing their cars. We have automobile dealerships that have cars sitting in the lots that they cannot move at the moment because no one can afford a $70,000 Jeep Wrangler. For some reason, Jeep has decided that they are going to be a luxury automobile company. And so if you look at the prices on Jeep, you're talking $60,000, $70,000. So you've got a whole bunch of Jeeps sitting out there on their lots. You have, now Toyota has another problem. Their problem is that they're still having a parts supply issue, so they're not able to produce the cars fast enough. So you've got some Toyota dealerships without hardly any cars sitting in their lots. I tell you, the financial picture of this country is total. It's not Wall Street, okay? Whatever's happening on Wall Street does not take into consideration what's happening in your home and my home, in our small business and your small business. Bankruptcies are up. And we're seeing it more and more every single day where they just cannot survive any longer. Inflation is killing them. Supply chain is still a problem, and that's hurting them. Diesel is still rather high to transport. So we've got all of these things into consideration, but all that you hear about on days when the job report comes out is just what they want to tell you. But you have to look at the economy in a much bigger picture. Listen, I've been an accountant since 1984 when I first opened up my private practice. And I have been advising companies for a long, long time, and I've gone through a couple depressions now. And we have made it through all this. But there was pain and there was suffering. And over the next few months, I want you to take some time and pay particular attention to the car manufacturers. I have a sneaking feeling that a lot of these companies that are dealing with electrical cars are going to be out of business. And that brings up another point is, if a car company goes out of business, how in the world do you get parts for that car? You've just invested into a car that you can't get parts for if that company goes out of business. So when we look at the good, we also have to look at the bad also. And so when we get these reports in on inflation, on unemployment, on jobs, whatever the company is, or whatever the report that's coming out, we have to look at the economy as a whole. And as a whole is not what's happening on Wall Street. As a whole is what's happening in your life and my life. So these numbers are important to understand, but it's also important that there's another story behind those numbers that you need to look at. Now, I'm hoping that the Federal Reserve is taking some time in looking at the economy as a whole. And perhaps this is just my suggestion, is that maybe on the interest rates, we hold off a month or two, just to see if the economy is picking up, if it's leading in the direction that we want it to go. We need to do something about inflation. Now, I've heard in another report that inflation on food has come down slightly, just slightly, but still not enough where wages are strong enough to continue with that inflationary side. So we have some things to look at. And I hope that as time goes by, you and I are planning our financial situation better, and we are becoming better at it, and we're budgeting better, and we're monitoring our cash flow better. We are being attacked by the government by wanting more taxes and by wanting more audits on the American people. And I'm going to talk about audits next week, by the way, and all of these new 30,000 IRS agents that's being hired and what their role is going to be. We're going to talk about that next week. Listen, this is Easter weekend. This is a time where you're with family and friends. Sit back and relax. Go to church. Have a good cup of coffee with a friend. And eat very well. But remember what Easter is all about. I'll talk with you soon. This is Mike Lodge with the Business Advisor. If you would like to send me a business question, send it to thebusinessadvisor@gmail.com. And if you'd like to schedule an appointment with me to talk about business issues, you can go to www.lodge.co.com. Happy Easter, everybody. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye.